I left for Spain on a Sunday morning in February. A long overdue work sabbatical, 6 weeks of bliss in Valencia. I'd arranged for everything: mail on hold, a neighbor to water the plants, ring camera active, bills paid, no pets, no parties, no problems. I even let the HOA know, just out of courtesy, that I'd be away for a while. That's when Karen started acting weird. Her name wasn't even Karen, but she was the president of the HOA, and she made it very clear that extended absences must be reviewed and approved by the board. I rolled my eyes. I lived in a single-family home. My yard was maintained by a landscaping service. I didn't see how my plane ticket to Spain concerned the HOA. I sent a polite email thanking her for the reminder and letting her know everything was covered. The next day, I got the first violation notice: unapproved extended absence, risk of property neglect. A $75 fine. I assumed it was a mistake, maybe an automated system gone rogue. I ignored it. 10 days later, another violation. This time, failure to respond to notice, escalation warning. The fine was now $250. I was in Spain eating paella and sipping sangria by the sea. The emails came sporadically, but I had spotty service and a full calendar of lectures and meetings. I figured I'd sort it out when I got back. That was mistake number one. Back home, Karen was busy. She took photos of my empty driveway, claimed no one was maintaining the lawn, a lie, and logged neighbor complaints about a neglected, vacant home. She submitted reports to the board, which consisted of her husband, her sister-in-law, and two people who never read the agenda. They voted to declare my home abandoned and non-compliant with HOA residential standards. Under our HOA bylaws, buried 43 pages deep, was a clause titled Extended Vacancy Procedures. It said the HOA may act to secure, manage, or liquidate properties deemed abandoned for more than 30 days without response to violation notices, provided good faith attempts at contact have been made. Karen had the clause highlighted. She claimed she'd mailed notices to an old address I hadn't used in 3 years, emailed me repeatedly, half went to spam, and visited the property to confirm it was empty. By the time I boarded my flight home, she had already begun steps to foreclose on my home for HOA fines totaling less than $800. The worst part? In states like mine, if you don't fight it quickly, non-judicial foreclosure can go through without ever seeing a courtroom. And I had no idea. While I was sipping espresso in Barcelona, Karen was filing liens in my county courthouse. She claimed my neglected property posed a risk to neighborhood standards. She said the grass was knee-high, though I had a landscaping contract that debunked that lie. She submitted blurry pictures of my front yard taken at strange angles, probably in low light, just enough to make it look unkempt. The HOA board accepted every word without question. No one objected, and Karen's husband seconded the vote for a lien. Within 2 weeks, she had filed for a non-judicial foreclosure under our HOA's covenant, perfectly legal in my state for unpaid dues or fines, even ones under $1,000. She added legal fees and processing costs to the total, inflating the balance to just over $1,700. Then came the auction. Karen claimed they had no choice but to proceed. She hired a third-party auctioneer, a company owned by her cousin, which conveniently charged 0 listing fees, but took a hefty commission. She listed my home for public sale with a starting bid of $35,000, barely 10% of its market value. By this point, she'd cut the locks and entered the home for a so-called inspection. Technically, she claimed it was to verify abandonment, but in reality, she had the locks changed and cleaned it out. Neighbors saw 2 men carrying boxes of my belongings out the front door. One took photos and tried calling me, but I was off-grid that weekend in the Pyrenees. 3 people showed up for the auction, all somehow connected to the HOA. The highest bidder, another LLC tied to Karen's cousin, won the home for $52,000. That was it. My $400,000 property gone, sold legally under the radar while I was gone for 6 weeks. Karen didn't even have the decency to wait for my return. A locksmith came the next morning to reinforce the locks, and movers arrived to empty the last remaining furniture. Only one neighbor, James, smelled the rot. He emailed me twice. "Hey man, something shady's going on at your house. You okay?" I didn't see it until I landed back in the States. I got the shock of my life when my Uber pulled up to my house and the keys no longer worked. I knocked. No answer. There was a "no trespassing private property" sign taped to my own front window. My mailbox was stuffed with junk. One envelope had a return address from the county courthouse. Inside was a notice of foreclosure sale, dated 2 weeks ago. I had missed it. And Karen? She was all smiles when she drove by in her golf cart. Next time, she said, slowing just enough for me to hear, maybe don't go ghost without telling your HOA. Rules are rules. My jaw tightened. The war had begun. I stood outside my own front door for 20 minutes before I accepted that it was really gone. The lock had been replaced with a commercial-grade keypad. My smart doorbell, gone. Windows dark. My landscaping looked fine. Lawn mowed, bushes trimmed, nothing like the overgrown, abandoned home Karen had described in her violation reports. It was a lie, start to finish. I called the police. 2 officers arrived and asked for ID. I showed them my driver's license, my passport, even the Ring app history proving the house was mine. But the officers flipped through their notes and pointed at a printed property deed. The current registered owner is Peninsula Ventures, LLC, one officer said flatly. They purchased the home through a non-judicial foreclosure process. If you believe this was done improperly, you'll need to pursue civil action. Civil action? I nearly laughed. This is my house. My clothes, my furniture, my damn birth certificate are probably still in there. I understand, sir, the officer said, but this is a civil matter now. We can't break in on your behalf. That would be trespassing. Trespassing in my own house. I drove to a nearby hotel and sat on the bed for nearly an hour, staring at the foreclosure notice. It had been mailed, conveniently, to my old apartment from 5 years ago. No email notice, no call, no registered letter to my current address, which the HOA obviously had. James, my neighbor, finally responded to my missed call. I knew something was off, he said. Karen had a locksmith out here in March. I asked her what was going on, and she said you'd abandoned the property, and she was following HOA protocol. I drove to the HOA office the next morning. Karen was already there, dressed like she was about to go to court herself, pressed pantsuit, pearls, and a grin that told me she was enjoying every second of this. You're back, she said, folding her hands. You were unresponsive for over 30 days. The board voted to proceed with foreclosure. I kept my voice calm. You sent notices to an address you knew was outdated. We sent what was legally required. You violated multiple bylaws, extended absence, failure to respond, property neglect. It's all in the records. You sold my house for 50 grand. She leaned in slightly, whispering. Next time, try following the rules. You wouldn't have lost it if you respected the HOA. I walked out before I lost control, called a real estate attorney that same afternoon. 3 days later, I had a copy of the foreclosure paperwork, the lien history, and the sales records. It took the lawyer all of 20 minutes to spot a glaring issue. The signatures on 2 board approval forms were identical. Pixel for pixel identical. Forged. Even worse, Peninsula Ventures, LLC, the buyer, was registered just 4 months earlier under an address that matched Karen's sister's rental unit. She didn't just sell my house, she sold it to herself. By the end of the week, I had a legal team and a strategy. My attorney, a no-nonsense woman named Angela Monroe, had dealt with shady HOAs before. The first thing she did was file an emergency injunction to freeze the property from resale, rental, or further transfer. We had just enough to claim fraud and improper notice, and the judge signed it within 48 hours. Then Angela went digging. Karen had used a combination of obscure bylaws, questionable documentation, and outright forgery to push the foreclosure. The fake board signatures were just the start. The HOA meeting minutes approving the foreclosure were suspiciously vague. There was no attendance log, no quorum confirmation, and the timestamp on the PDF creation was the day after the supposed meeting. Angela subpoenaed the HOA's financial records and communications. That's when it all started to unravel. First, the auction company. Red Oak Estate Liquidators was legally owned by a man named Kyle Benton, Karen's cousin by marriage. He had no real auction credentials. His company had never held a public auction before and wasn't licensed as a foreclosure trustee in our county. Second, the buyer, Peninsula Ventures LLC, had been created just weeks before the sale. Registered agent, Kyle Benton, again, mailing address, a P.O. box shared by 3 other LLCs tied to Karen's family. Third, the sale price, $52,000, was criminally low. The home had been appraised just 6 months earlier for $412,000. No attempt was made to advertise it publicly. No signs, no online listing, just a single printed notice in the HOA office window. Angela called it constructive fraud. The HOA board's abuse of procedural rules, combined with self-dealing and falsified documents, painted a clear picture. Karen had engineered the sale for personal gain. We filed suit. Civil fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, conspiracy, unjust enrichment, wrongful foreclosure, and violation of state HOA statutes. The local paper picked up the story next. Homeowner returns to find HOA sold his house while abroad. The headline spread like wildfire. A reporter knocked on my hotel door the next day. I gave them everything: emails, photos, violation notices, the works. Karen tried to spin it. She released a statement claiming I'd abandoned the property and that the HOA had acted within its rights under our charter. But public pressure mounted fast. Other homeowners started speaking up about bogus fines, mysterious liens, late fees that seemed to double overnight. Then came the bombshell. One of the board members, Frank, the quiet one, contacted Angela through a third-party mediator. He wanted immunity in exchange for his testimony. Turns out he never voted for the foreclosure. Karen forged his signature and claimed it was unanimous. The board meetings had often been held by email, sometimes without notice. Frank had screenshots of texts where Karen bragged, "The idiot left for Europe? Let's clear him out before he's back." That went straight into our amended complaint. Karen's attorney tried to settle. Angela laughed and hung up. It was going to court. Public. On record. And Karen, she wasn't just losing her fake LLC or her HOA throne. She was going to lose everything. The courtroom was packed the day Karen took the stand. Local news crews hovered outside. Half the neighborhood showed up to watch. Karen wore her usual power suit, pearls, blazer, smug expression. But it cracked quickly under cross-examination. Angela walked her straight into a perjury trap. "Mrs. Halbrook, did the HOA board unanimously approve the foreclosure?" "Yes," Karen said firmly. Angela tapped the monitor. "Exhibit 14, text messages between you and Mr. Benton. Quote, 'Frank won't sign off. I'll just use last month's minutes. Who's going to check?'" The judge raised an eyebrow. Karen stammered. That's taken out of context." Angela didn't even blink. "Let's try context then. Exhibit 27. Bank records showing Peninsula Ventures wired $52,000 to the HOA account, followed by a $15,000 withdrawal 2 days later into an account tied to your cousin. Coincidence?" Karen leaned back, jaw clenched. And then came Frank. He testified about Karen's manipulation, how she pushed through votes, controlled the budget, and treated the HOA like her personal kingdom. He showed texts, emails, even voice memos where Karen laid out the whole scheme. The jury didn't take long. Unanimous verdict: guilty of civil fraud, wrongful foreclosure, breach of fiduciary duty, conspiracy to defraud, and abuse of HOA authority. Damages? A staggering $485,000, enough to cover the value of my home, lost property, legal fees, emotional distress, and punitive damages. But that wasn't the end. The judge didn't mince words. This was a deliberate and deceitful abuse of power for personal gain. You used your position to manufacture violations, manipulate legal processes, and exploit a homeowner's temporary absence for profit. Karen tried to appeal. She lost. The county sheriff's office opened a criminal investigation shortly after. Fraudulent lien filings, forged signatures, and money laundering through the auction company turned out to be very interesting to the DA's office. Karen was arrested 2 weeks later. Mugshot all over the news. As for my house, the court voided the foreclosure and reversed the sale. I moved back in, changed every lock, and poured myself a glass of Spanish wine I'd saved from the trip. At the next HOA meeting, now under state supervision, I walked in, signed up for the homeowner comment section, and stood at the podium. "Hi. Just wanted to remind everyone," I said into the mic, "you don't need HOA permission to go on vacation." Scattered laughter. Karen wasn't there. She was still being held on a $100,000 bond. The HOA dissolved by court order. A professional property management company now handles everything. Transparent billing, monthly audits, no more surprise fines, no more unapproved liens, no more Karen. She lost her home, her pension, her reputation, and soon, likely her freedom. And me, I learned one thing: never underestimate the power of paperwork, receipts, and one really good lawyer. The end. Please like and subscribe for more HOA showdowns like this. Do you think Karen got what she deserved? Comment below.